Excellent. I think we're live. We're transmitting live from the ICDE World Conf 17 in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I'm Ken Bauer. I'll be your virtually connecting buddy, the virtual buddy today. And I'll go straight on site. We have Terry there, we have Helen there, and a gang of folks to join us today. Why don't we do introductions on site so we know who you all are?
Sure, I'll start. Elizabeth Childs from Royal Roads University in Victoria, BC.
Terry Anderson, formerly of Athabasca University and living in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
Laura Chenrich from the University of Cape Town, South Africa.
Sakina Walshy, also from Cape Town.
Lisa Hammersheim, I'm a student with Athabasca University from Chicago.
And Martin Weller from the Open University UK, and I'm just gate crashing.
Excellent. So why don't we go, we'll quickly introduce the virtuals because we've got a lot of people here. We'll go with Colin, then DM, then Hoda, then Maha, then Yin.
Hi, everyone. Colin Madland, currently at Trinity Western University in Langley, BC.
Hi, everyone. I'm DM from Fort McMurray, a recent graduate of UBC Med program.
Hi, I'm Hoda. I'm from the American University in Cairo.
And I'm Maha, also American University in Cairo and co-founder of Virtually Connecting.
Hi, I'm Yin, and I'm from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign.
Hi.
Wonderful. I'm Ken Bauer, originally from Victoria, Canada, but I've been living in Guadalajara, Mexico for the last 20 years or so. So what's going on at the event? Why don't we turn it over to the on-site people and let us know what the buzz is and what's going on.
If I could start, and I'm just going to go back and reminisce because it's such a delight for me to see this organization, this happening. And just to make a long story short, in 1981, the Bangkok conference of the ICDE was being held, and I was out of work. I was a PhD student, and I really had been going to this conference, but I couldn't go, couldn't afford to. So I thought, wonder if we could put it online. And this was before the internet was around in 1981, except in very experimental ways. And so I asked 6 speakers, people, grand gurus of distance ed, to do keynotes that they did by email, and then we distributed it by BitNet, FidoNet, Usenet. And we had what we called porters, which were people who would take the email message and the subsequent conversations and put it onto another network, usually just copy and paste, moving things around. And so I think that was the very first online conference, and it's such a delight to see the improvements in technology today for this conference. So.
Things have come a long way since then.
They have.
That was so lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Terry, when I was doing my master's in 2003, of course, your work was one of the earliest things I ever read. And it's just a delight to meet you. And I'm so glad that Laura and Martin and Lisa could make it because they've been with us, part of Virtually Connecting, for quite some time now. And they weren't originally going to make it, so thank you so much, you guys, for making it. And Elizabeth, I know we've talked with you about Virtually Connecting. It's your first time on, right?
First time on, I know. Well, I've been on Rebecca's class a couple of times, but yeah, and I follow you all the time. I was just saying to Carrie, you know what I've decided I need? Probably do it now, but I need a robot. I need an iPad with all of you on my hand, like a little, you know, someone can custom sleeve for it. So that when I go to sessions, we can just sit there and you can listen, kind of like a bit of a riff on your email chain. So all of you could actually just be in the session. Now the conference organizers might not like that, but just I think this is such a brilliant opportunity to have the conversations extend beyond the conference.
So Laura, is your keynote recorded? I want to watch it.
Well, it was.
I want to know what you all have been doing.
Interesting about this event is there have been no keynotes. So. I mean, there's 1,400 people, and it's a big thing, and it's a big event, and it's not following a traditional format.
Yeah.
And what they've done, which has, I think, been really effective, is they've had kind of keynote plenaries. So instead of a keynote, each with 10 minutes to speak on kind of carefully curated related topics. And I think it's worked really well.
I think so too. Yeah, I've enjoyed them all.
I think it's worked really well, actually. I mean, I think it takes quite a lot of effort because you have to think about who you're going to have and how what they're going to say might relate to each other. But I think it's worked really well. And also,
if it's boring, it's only 10 minutes.
Yeah, there's that too.
Not half yours.
Yeah, I thought that worked well. And yesterday's one, what they did was the tracks of the conference. Each person was asked to comment on the track, on the kind of key issues of that track. And that set the tone for the various tracks of the whole conference. So I think that was quite an effective strategy, actually. Today's was really different.
So in the presentations themselves, you're limited to 4 slides, which for anybody in this area is almost an impossibility.
You didn't follow that advice.
I did. I tried really hard. And so I was trying to get the Indigenous acknowledgement in and all of this.
You did really well though.
But I
4
think,
slides.
I mean, we tell our students all the time, right? You've got to be clear and concise in your writing and really be able to defend your work. So it was, from personally reflecting, it's been really great to be able to try to do that in 10 minutes in 4 slides. And now this afternoon I'm presenting on behalf of others, and I'm a little more nervous about that because I don't know the work as well, right? And so I want to make sure it's going to be tight and reflect their work well, but in this time limit. So.
Because you were not allowed any pictures. I mean, no pictures.
On the plenary.
In the plenary.
Oh,
really? No pictures. I suffered over the no pictures bit.
Yeah. You pulled it off.
Well, could you do like a visual text thing? Like, could you do like a concept map or like a table or?
Well, one of the people this morning, I don't know how he did it, but he managed to persuade somebody to switch on.
He innovated.
Yeah.
He innovated.
Yeah.
That's perhaps a more generous.
To pull back to Terry's reminiscence, I would have put out some ASCII art so I could get a picture in there.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's part of the innovativeness too, is that the keynotes weren't hiding behind PowerPoints as I usually do.
I think that's the idea.
And so it added a different dynamics. It also shows that public speaking skills that some of us got taught in school and others acquired naturally, and some of us are too afraid to even, certainly don't go to Toastmasters. But it was a new experience for me too, and it worked.
Yeah.
I've been in a couple of sessions presenting, and the one thing I've noticed is usually when they sort of say this is a track or this is a theme, it's almost completely random, and one paper has kind of no connection to another one.
Yeah.
Whereas ones have actually been really nicely sequenced, and
Yeah.
there's been a good kind of connection between them, which is quite. So that must take a lot of effort, I think, to get that right. It actually takes reading the papers and like thinking which ones line up well. That's been quite impressive.
I've also been really impressed that just the interactivity. People really actually are asking good questions in the sessions, and not just that one person that gets brave enough to put their hand up. But the ones I've been in, there's been some real dialogue and some back and forth, and then some building off of those questions in the room and knowledge sharing. It's been really nice to see.
Yeah, I think for me, I think you said there were 1,700 people here or something like that. That's crazy. We're like a town of a conference, but it does feel like almost a smaller conference pace, just with the snappiness of the sessions and the changing. And you start seeing the same people everywhere, so it does feel like we're a little in the midst of everything.
So it's mid-conference. What are you looking forward to? Oh, sorry, Maha.
Just because Huda, my little kid, just wants to say hi to Sukaina, and she's not sure that she's seeing what we're typing.
Hi,
so.
Huda.
Sorry about that, because she met her in England, and oh, hey, Mahmoud is here. Anyway, sorry. So come and say hi to Sukaina, and then okay, I'm gonna mute so that they can have a conversation. Okay?
Hi, Huda.
So I was saying mid-conference. What are you looking forward to in the second half? Or just letting it roll over you like a tide?
Well, I've got the unfortunate position of having an 8:30 a.m. presentation tomorrow morning.
Ooh, I
So
share.
yes, so for me, it's not really even there yet. You know, I'll relax a little bit after that. But I think it's been quite, as all conferences, it's just been really difficult to decide what to go to, and you just have to kind of make a commitment and not feel kind of buyer's remorse when you're in there, because you're following the Twitter of other people's presentations. Think, oh, I wish I was in that one as well. So
it's like supermarket queues.
Yes.
The other one's always moving faster.
Yes,
Other
yes,
sessions are always
yes.
more interesting. isn't it?
Yes, and so I sort of have to stop myself trying to and follow 2 others on Twitter at the same time, because that can't be good for you. But it's quite good, the sort of social media surround that's going on as well, and it doesn't always work at all conferences, but it seems to be fairly active and lively. I was with a colleague who said to me, all these conferences, everyone is just too nice.
Well, you're in Canada.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Oh, Canadians have a bit of a reputation for always saying sorry and being much nicer than they really are.
So I suppose we haven't had any bust-ups, any arguments. There hasn't been any sort of, at least in the sessions I've been in, disagreement, fundamental disagreements or points of view. So I think that's.
Well, we're sorry.
10 minutes, it's a little challenging sometimes too.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, the session I was in, I wouldn't say it got heated, but it certainly got a bit contested, which was nice.
Yeah.
It was around, whether the public good of the university is being undermined by all the privatization that's happening in the sector.
Yeah.
So that people got quite engaged in that question. So that was good.
I think one thing I noticed, I've been to ICDE a few times and also the OE Global conferences, is they're much more internationally diverse often than the US-based conferences and things like Open Ed and those kind of things. And that's really good to hear those different perspectives. I think you do get a much broader range of people here, I think, because it's an international kind of commonwealth of distance education. It's like it brings in all those. I often feel that's lacking a bit from North American conferences, but perhaps US specifically. I think kind of what counts as open education in the US is very US specific. I think. I was when I was here in Toronto in April for the Creative Commons summit, and I was telling people there, I'm from the Open University, and none of them had heard of it. They were like, "So is that a startup?" No, it's a university. It's like,
it's been around for a while.
Yeah, that's totally been my experience too, Martin. When I was over in Europe at OE Global 16 and then OER 16, it was a very different feel. Even OER 16, which is very much focused in the UK, seemed more, international and global in scope. But yeah, I mean, it's just something that's different, but I think it's good.
One of the things I noticed about this conference and a lot of the other ones, they're really focused on professional development rather, and if you could summarize a lot of the state presentations as, here's what I'm doing, isn't it wonderful? And they are wonderful, a lot of them, and I pick up ideas, and I think there's really value from the practitioner point of view, but it really contrasts to OERA or AERA or some of the research focused conferences, and for better and for worse. So I think it would be nice, like I think Eden, they have their general conference every year, and then they have a research conference every second year, and it does give a different flavor when people have a little bit longer time, but they're also presenting data and results, not just experience in 10 minutes with 4 slides.
Okay. That's a really good point, because some of the presentations that I'm doing here on behalf of others, one is a student presentation, and so it's data from her thesis and trying to condense that into 10 minutes and do voice to all of the amazing work that her participants did in her study and what she found that's really pertinent. It's hard to do, right? And to get that research stream in here. One of the things I've heard in conversation is the need for student voice. Where are the student voices in the conversation? hard to do globally and hard to do when you've got early, mid, and more mature career learners that you're dealing with. But I think that's something that they need to perhaps consider. And this is my first time at this conference, so I'm saying that with a bit of humility because it may have been done in the past and there's some lessons learned I don't know, but it's something that I think is a bit absent here.
I mean, I think it is a practitioner-focused conference, really. Speak up. Yeah.
So, sorry, I have a question. Not that there's an answer, but I've always been asked by colleagues in universities, universities that are just trying to set up online programs in their universities, and they always say, so Yin, tell me, we're just going with the online service providers, say like 2U or someone out there, Pearson or something, and they say, we don't have resources in our university to start a program, so we have to farm out, to these providers. And then they say, well, what do you think? Does this work for us? And should we continue doing that? So I was wondering, what are your thoughts on this dilemma they have with a lack of resources to start online programs?
Well, I've been in a few presentations that have said exactly
Yeah.
that. I was in one yesterday where there was a vendor along with a university who had used them, and they sort of did a double act of, which was very, very useful and interesting, and it was obvious it had gone well. What I haven't heard is where things haven't gone well. And that would have been really, really interesting to know where things haven't gone well. Because we're all looking at this in our context and wondering how to proceed and what the options are. But certainly that, we don't have resources, so we have no choice to partner with somebody and
right.
Leveraging that, or actually, saying that we could do that. So the one I was in was very much around business modeling and being very sure about the market and very sure about what sort of courses you would programs you would develop and choose. And it was quite frightening, some of the costs that were outlined, and it did make me feel, gosh, for somebody who would have to in-source that or develop internal capacity, it was quite daunting to listen to that.
I feel contractually obliged to say open educational resources are your friend in this. So you could take an open textbook and add in a few effect simulations or whatever, and with not much, with quite a lot of effort, but with not much cost.
But it wasn't so much the content; it was just
it was the time.
It was the cost of the marketing and the business modeling and all of these kinds of ancillary services. And really, I've seen the language of consumers being used much more in this conference than, say, ICDE 2 years ago, where I was there, and also with other conferences. It just seems to be this year, and I've been to a few conferences, and that's been, people are using that language. And someone pointed out this morning, I wish they wouldn't call students customers.
I guess what I would miss or think that the learning curve and the opportunity to allow the champions to emerge within your curriculum, even for marketing or to challenge them rather than to outsource, because there's so much do-it-yourself of it, resources, not only the content but from marketing issues or getting your students to do in your business program to do marketing as a project, and so the intellectual development happens in-house. I think that would be my preference, rather than trying to get cash, give it to some external company.
Yeah, my experience has been interesting. Oh, I had an echo, maybe not anymore. I've been running a one-man show for the last year, and I've gotten a whole infrastructure for design and development of courses and deployment, all using open source software. We've launched our first course this last September, and we're scaling up. And so, there are definitely some ways that you can do it on, I don't want to say on the cheap, because it's certainly not a huge outlay of expense, but it is certainly possible.
But that's because you're an Athabasca graduate too.
Indeed, yeah. I'll send a link to the stealth distance presentation I gave yesterday. Thanks to Ken Monroe. I came in through Skype, and I'm not sure the organizers knew.
But that was a good question. Any other questions from anybody?
Anything from Hoda? I know DM was there saying she was just enjoying being a first timer for virtually connecting. I like to shout out to the people that do this the first time as well.
So to extend that conversation, I think sometimes, can you hear me? I think sometimes universities don't know who should start the ball rolling. It's like someone up there may think we want to get into online learning, online education, because it is a source of revenue with more mature students now and working adults in universities, the changing landscape of learning. And it seems sometimes, no one knows who would be the champion or could be the champion. Do you come across that challenge? Would it start with, like the vice provost of learning? Would it start with the university college, professional studies? It's like no one knows who should be the central unit, or should there be a central unit?
I mean, it's interesting because what I've been struck by, and maybe it's the background of this conference, the distance education providers. Online is much more established in the community that I have encountered at this conference than it is in my own university. So I'm talking to people who are doing loads of online courses, and we're only starting. We're a bit more like you are, Ian, asking those questions and what structures do we need in place. We're a traditionally residential university, whereas what I've been enjoying here is people have been doing this for a long time, and that's quite helpful because it means you can learn from people, but they do have a lot of the infrastructure in place already. And so some of what I want to know is what are the real costs? What are the hidden costs? What are the real challenges? What's worked? What hasn't worked? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So that's been nice for me. I mean, that blurring between the traditional and the distance. Yeah. I think we are starting to see it here. A few years ago, I would have asked myself, what am I doing at a conference of distance education providers? We don't do that. But actually, we do that.
But and isn't that, I think that's the crux of it, right? Like this term is so limiting now compared to where the experience is in practice.
Yep. So I think we are starting to see that blurring. I also have a feeling, and I mean, other people need to tell me if I'm right, but I have a feeling that some of the traditional distance education providers are in a bit of a crisis.
Yeah, there's a lot of soul searching about.
I would say a large crisis, almost all of them. And it's funny, you'd think that all these years of experience and that they would be the first to adapt to the new technologies, and in fact, it's been just the opposite. I guess victims of success in the past, in some ways, and victim loss. Yes, and it's reluctance to change.
Yeah, our advantage as a newcomer is that we get to skip a lot of the stuff that the Athabascas and TRUs are dealing with. Watching TRU try to move from Blackboard to Moodle and looking at their 4-year project to do that is it's a nightmare. But we get to skip all that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so the first mover advantage, I don't see it. It just locks us in. And why don't they talk about it? Well, I guess we still walk around from the traditional open universities as if we're the leaders, and it's in all our literature how we're blasting away. So we don't want to get people to look behind the curtain too much.
I was in a session yesterday, and Ross Paul was talking exactly about that kind of the crisis. I think particularly for the single mode distance education universities, that their market's been chipped away. So I think there is a real that they'll continue to exist, really.
One of the presentations I'd like to follow up on is your presentation, Martin, about the UFAT models. I've got it in for you, that acronym. And did that reveal the sort of the work that you do? I don't know if people know about it, but
so
I'd like to learn more about that.
We're doing some work on behalf of ICDE, looking at what they called UFAT, and we're going to make UFAT a thing. is open, online, flexible, and technology enhanced learning. So it's kind of, so we surveyed lots of universities around the world about how they're using that for different things, and we've come up with a number of different models. So some are using it to kind of reach new markets, or others using it to kind of to reinforce their core functions and those kind of things. Technology they're using, and it's remarkably conservative. So like there's almost like an inverse law between the amount of media attention a technology gets and how much is actually being used. So artificial intelligence, like no one's using it, but like if you were to look at the number of articles, like they're all about AI. So I think that's interesting. So we're coming up with a number of both business models and kind of pedagogic use models that we can. And the idea was very much to kind of look at sustainable, practical models, so things that people are actually doing rather than conjecture and prediction and sort of Silicon Valley stuff. So hopefully that will come out in the next month or two.
I'm going to be conscious of time as well. I don't want to push you guys past too much of your lunch hour. We're fine on this side, but just to make sure you're good on your time as well.
Yeah, just so you know, the folks here haven't had lunch yet because they forego the lunch lineup, the long lines to come here. So yeah, we're going to deke out if that's okay, Ken, and you can keep doing the conversation.
Wonderful. So I'd like to wrap up, and thanks for everyone on site for joining. This is wonderful.
Thank you.
All right, just going to.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
And I'll keep this still running in case anyone wanted to add something as well. I know Colin and Ian had some back and forth there. I'll make sure I keep track of the side notes in our side conversation. I'll copy paste that for our own use later in case there's at least Colin's link there.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
So are there links? Sorry. So are there links to the presentations on the website?
I don't know the answer actually.
Is this link that Colin is sharing is from your own page? Is it your?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. It's not from the conference site. Okay. Thank you. All right.
Any thoughts, Donna, on your first virtually connecting session?
Oh, it was fun. It was really, really good. I enjoyed it. I have a quick question, and maybe you guys can weigh in.
Sure.
Is there room for someone mentioned, one of the on-site buddies mentioned that not many people talk about the problems that they encounter when they try to implement new technologies. Is there space for that? Is there room for that discussion ongoing so that those of us who venture into using new technologies don't feel like, we're alone or this has never happened?
I think that's a critically important question, Donna. We are still recording, so I'll just remind everyone, we usually do a post-show after the on-site people leave. As a software engineer, I try to teach my students that you need to document why you made decisions that were wrong as well as the ones that were right. And it frustrates me as an academic when we see people presenting, this is what happened at our whatever project, if they don't share what the pain points were. So I think it's really important. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think that we should always share both the challenges, the barriers, the drawbacks, and the strengths. If not, then I don't think the discussion is complete, It's not always so utopian.
It's not genuine.
Yeah, it's not real. Yep. But I don't know. For a presentation in public, I'm not sure. So they're saying that they didn't hear the negative aspects of it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they're representing the institution and they have some guidelines. I'm not sure. Yeah.
But it is an excellent point, because I think institutions might say, oh, we don't want to share what we did wrong, right. But it's like, this is how we need to show students that we fail too and be good models of behavior.
It's part of learning. Yeah. So I'm not sure. Sometimes the institutional guidelines on what you can share in media and in public. Yeah.
Hoda, you were going to jump in as well, I think.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, am I back now? Okay. Yep. So I wanted to build on what you guys were talking about. You put your best face forward, and I think the number of times I've had someone at a conference say, okay, this is what we did wrong, and this is where we failed, and it went terribly, and if I were to do it again, I would do it this way. And the reality is that that's what happens in real life. Yeah. it seems like it's sense that it's just unrealistic to have. I mean, I've been to conferences where that was the whole thread of it. It's and I haven't been back. So Maha and I this year last year actually we wanted to have a session where teachers could cut up and talk about their failures and get feedback from other faculty about how they have done it differently. But it was shot down because we were told that faculty wouldn't be happy or comfortable talking about their failures in front of other people.
Interesting.
So I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've experienced very much the same thing here at Trinity. You know, just trying to get people to blog about their practice. And I'm continually met with, oh, they wouldn't want to do that. They wouldn't want to share, you know, they don't have the confidence that their ideas are worth much or anything like that. But I mean, it's frustrating because it's exactly those things that other people need to know. That, you know, we're all in this, you know, in very similar situations. We all have questions about our practice and things like that. And so, yeah, even the relatively, I mean, a little bit more anonymous and safe, or less personally connected idea of doing something like that on a blog is still really intimidating because people might find out that I did something wrong.
No, but you also said if you're obviously starting maybe to do more online, but you don't have to repeat everybody else's mistakes, right? So I'm you know, it's curious how we're not, you know, we did it this way, it didn't work, it might work if you did this. We're doing the same thing. We're starting online, possibly more blended. And I would love for someone to just come in for a couple of days and say, okay, what do you want to do? We did it. This is what to avoid. Don't go down that road. Why don't you try this? In hindsight, I would do this. That would be so great, right? Because it would save so much time. I don't know. Are there consultants like that that won't charge you a lot of money and be useless?
Yeah. There was an interesting last event at OpenEd last week was Robin DeRose and others doing one that they called How Can We Destroy the Open Education Movement? And conversations about ethics. And it was great because they did a TRIZ, an activity where it was first list how we could just do the worst possible thing, right? And then it was, well, okay, so which of those are you actually implementing that's the bad practices in your environment? And then how can we remediate this situation? I think that was a wonderful exercise that we did. And I stole that, although Alan would tell me don't call it stealing. And I stole that for my session with my students on Monday about security practices. And so I think reflecting on bad practices, even if you haven't done it, and then kind of identify, oh yeah, this is something we did that was wrong, and how to fix it is a cool activity. It was a wonderful session.
They call it a post-mortem in some
in software engineering.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, in software engineering, we call it post-mortem, and we call this anti-patterns of, you know, how we list the bad way of doing something so we can avoid it.
Yeah, we're going to try something like that with Christian, Friedrich, and Maha at OEB. We will be aliens at that conference, but we're going to try.
Awesome. Awesome. Any other thoughts, folks? Because I got to go to a class in about 15 minutes.
All right. Just one last comment. Maybe sometimes the thing is the right community of people that you're with and the right, not right, but the conference that you're at, maybe that's not the space or what we call the tribe where you can share these things, you know? So I'm not sure. Just
yeah, it's definitely a comfort level thing when you're sharing these experiences. Wonderful question, Donna.
Thank you. I like my new tribe.
Oh, this is a tribe. I love being with this tribe. I'm missing lunch, but it's about being with this tribe. All right. Well, why don't I wrap up for today? Thank you so much for joining us. This has been great, and I'll sign out from Virtually Connecting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Bye.
All right, I'm going to hit the stop broadcast button. I will share the links that we all shared here in the chat to us It's not for public use, but we'll share it between us. All right.
Perfect.